Hello and welcome to another Star Wars Old Republic video. So today I'm going to bring you a video on kind of how to play through different aspects of the game. This is mostly geared towards players who aren't currently in the endgame portion of the game, but there's some stuff that might be applicable to those players as well. We are going to be talking about 5 different ways that you can go about increasing your power, your strength, to be able to clear content, make yourself stronger, and make things generally a bit easier in the game. What are these 5 things we want to talk about? So the first one is we're going to talk about level, how level impacts you. Then we're going to talk about the actual gear, how gear impacts your ability. We're going to talk about how using your companions works, and then we're going to give you a couple other options, such as having other players potentially help you clear content, grouping up together, and then just some general tips on how to make your character a bit stronger in terms of learning different playstyle tricks and how different abilities work and function within the game. So let's get started with the very first thing, is being the appropriate level. So how do we know if we're an appropriate level for the content we want to do? Well, we have to be aware of how the game handles level scaling to bring you down to an appropriate power level for the content that you're currently doing. So if you click on any map on the galaxy map, you're going to notice that it's going to have a level right here underneath the travel now. It says level 70 to 75. So what this means is they suggest you be at least level 70 to join this planet, or you're going to find it very hard to be able to do the content on this planet. So if you happen to notice at the planet you're currently on that you're below this suggested minimum level, get your level up. It's going to help you and make you stronger. Now, an interesting thing though is they have an upper range as well. So if we look right now, I'm on Odessen, and I am not even close to the level requirement. I'm currently at level 51, so it shows my level here. I'm completely under-leveled for the planet. Now we're going to pop on over to Alderaan, which is the level 28 to level 32 planet, to see what I mean about being scaled down to that maximum level cap. Alright, so now we're here on Alderaan, and if you look where it shows my level, it actually says I have been level shifted to 33. So this means that I've been downgraded to appropriate stats in their mind for level 33. The way that this works can create a lot of problems, and it can create a lot of problems with your gearing as well. So let's get into the section about talking about how gearing impacts your strength, and we'll first start off by saying how gearing impacts your strength when you're on these planets where you are above the level cap of the planet and being scaled down. So if I open up my character sheet here and I click on the details, we can look through a bunch of different details. As you can see right now, my armor rating is 97. This is not exactly an appropriate armor rating for being level 51. I'm actually pretty far ahead in terms of the level compared to my item rating. Now, if I go ahead and I put on some weaker gear, so we're going to put on just a few items here. So I put a few items on here that drop my item rating down to level 76. And as you can see, I actually lost some stats, right? So even though I'm being downscaled from a higher level and putting at an appropriate place, I might have thought that I was being overpowered for being on this planet because I'm a higher level, but because I'm not wearing the gear that's appropriate for my level, it's still going to make me weaker. So just keep that in mind, of course, that putting on better gear, even when you're level scaled, will improve how well you do on these planets. It's a really frustrating mechanic they put in. I feel like it's actually quite punishing for whatever reason. Like, why am I weaker just because I leveled up if my gear doesn't go up with me? Oh well, that's the way the game works. If you want to learn a little bit more about places to get shortcuts on getting your item rating up and going to certain vendors, make sure you check out my video called Vendors of SWTOR, as I cover all the different ways that there's vendors at different level breakpoints to go and find higher item rating gear. That's what we want to talk about with item rating, is just try and get your item rating as high as possible and being able to know where to get some of those items when you feel a little bit stuck, and that'll give you a big power boost whether or not you're at the level or higher than the level of the content that you're doing. Alright, so let's talk about your companions and how you can make them stronger to make them help you out in your adventures more. So one of the first things, of course, you can right-click the companion portrait and you can select their role. Generally, I will only ever set them to heal or damage role. I pretty much never find tank roles that useful. Healing is usually the best one if you're on a damage dealing character, and if you're on a healing character, you want to set them to a damage. If you're really good with your character though, and you're playing on a damage character, you can get away with setting them to damage. As a tank, I usually don't need to set them to heals, and I can set them to damage, but there are certain fights where, again, I just find it more convenient to set them to heals, so I don't have to worry about playing as hard and still being very successful. The other way, of course, is you can press N, which will bring up your companions and contact window, and here you can see the influence level of your companion. You can change their role, you can tell them to sell the junk in your inventory, and you can see a bit of a description, and for role-playing purposes, you can see what they like and dislike, and these are going to be the conversation choices. So, Vet does not like it whenever you kiss up to somebody and so if you're talking to Boris, you definitely don't want to say, "You're such a good master." You want to say, "Fuck you, old geezer." Oh, sorry for the swearing. Anyways, this is what you want to look at. You want to increase this influence level as high as you can to make your companion stronger. Now you don't have to go straight for the maximum level of 50 immediately, but the higher this gets, the easier it is going to make it on your adventures. I do have in my video Vendors of SWTOR different ways to get companion gifts that you can look into to figure out how to increase that influence level. Pretty simple though. Once you have companion gifts, you just right click them from your inventory while your companion's out and you'll give them a gift and it'll increase the influence rate. I will link in the description a Google spreadsheet that allows you to see the best companion gifts to give to different companions. And of important to note, if you have this Java scrap here, make sure that you're aware that some companions will take the gifts that come off of the Java junk vendors that are found in the Cartel Bazaar. That's covered in that other video. And the main area to get most of your companion gifts is going to be in the Galactic Trade Market of Fleet and this little room here with this kind of L-shaped table. You'll be able to buy gifts to give to your companions. I highly suggest that if you're going to give a lot of gifts to your companions and you want to level them up really high and you want to save money, to buy the cheapest ones that are still going to give points to them and then set up a basic auto clicker where you can walk away from the computer for half an hour to an hour and all the gifts will be given while you're doing something else a little more enjoyable like sleeping or watching your favorite show. So the other thing, and it's a little bit more difficult to do, but if you are having trouble beating certain bosses or certain content, one of the things you can do is you can group up with other players. This allows you and their companion to work together, or if you have more than 2 players together in a group, then your companions will be dismissed, so you only have a maximum of 4 characters, NPCs, whatever in total, and these players can then help you out, right? So this is a great option, but I know it's a little bit harder to do. It's not always possible to find somebody who's willing to help you beat a harder enemy that's too tough for you, or join up, right? You can try and use the in-game chat to recruit. Obviously, being part of a guild will help with that. So if you join a guild and there's people in your guild who are active and like helping lower level players, there's a higher chance that they'll come out and help you. But again, it doesn't guarantee that they're going to help you. It doesn't guarantee that people will be available and be able to help you at all times. So it is a bit of a harder thing to find somebody to play with, and it relies on other people rather than on yourself. Now, if you guys have been wondering why I've taken such a long break from making YouTube videos and I don't really have that much content, well, honestly, one of the big reasons is I just don't play that much. I am no longer a subscriber. I'm actually a little annoyed. I forgot that I had this class set to a shadow instead of a sorcerer. When I logged out last that I had my subscription, logged back in, found out my sub had expired, and now I'm locked out of being a sorcerer, right? I played the game a lot. Like I have, I don't know, 2,500 hours, 3,000 hours in the game. I really don't know. It's a ton that I've played the game. And I've gotten to the point where there's just not much left for me to do, right? Like I've played the majority of the stuff that you can ever play in the game. I definitely say though, the game is great to play if you're not in that point where you've played a lot of the content and you're really looking to do this end game stuff that I feel they've made a lot less enjoyable compared to what the game used to be like. Anyways, let's keep going on and we'll talk to you about the 5th way that you can get better at making yourself stronger and be able to beat basically any content you want. Alright, so we saved kind of the best for last. This one is in some ways the hardest one, so that's why I saved it till the end, but it's also the one that kind of has the most payoff and the most benefit overall. And that is learning how to play your class better, learning about how the different mechanics in the game work, and stuff like that. So I wanted to try and make this section pretty short for everybody, but it's a big complex topic and it's very hard to make it short as a result. So temp number, carry the 1, divide by 3 times 38. Yeah, anyways, let's carry on. So I want to break down kind of the basics thoughts. First of all is go read a class guide, right? That will help you. The problem with reading a class guide though is they're designed for when you reach the maximum level and you have all of your available abilities to you. It makes it way easier to do stuff when you have all that, and when you don't, as you're doing your leveling experience, you can't always follow that. So the class guide will help you learn about some of your more powerful abilities, how some of the things work together, but you'll still want to take a look at what you have in game. So if we press K to open up our combat style window, you can look through your ability tree, you can read the different choices you can have, you can read about some of the different passives you gain, you can go to your ability tab, select your character's role, and then again see additional passives and abilities this way, right? So there's a lot of information there that can get a bit overwhelming. How we want to categorize this a little bit. So every class is going to have a few kind of buckets of abilities that I like to kind of group together to make things a little bit simpler. So on this character, I happen to be a ranged character who's set to being a commando, gunnery specifically. And I have all my single target abilities that I'm going to want to use in a fight. So Vortex Bolt all the way through down to Electronet. And then I have a few area of effect abilities that I want to use. Hail of Bolts, Mortar Volley, Plasma Grenade. And then I have some random utility items like Tech Override to make my Plasma Grenade instant cast or to make one of my grab rounds instant cast. I've got my Supercharged Cells, which is a useful ability I want to use in my rotation. And then I've got my interrupt here. So there's just a few useful things like that, right? Now, some other things we want to think about is crowd control and mobility. So for crowd control, I have a long duration stun ability called Concussive Round. So in this class, in my ability tree, at 68, I have to choose if I want to take my instant 4-second stun, my hold the line, which gives me more mobility, or my Echoing Deterrence, which is a defensive ability that has some self-heal. So I only got to pick Echoing Deterrence out of these three, but I still have this long duration stun. I've got my Concussion Charge, which is a 360-degree knockback, knocking enemies away from me. That again is a type of crowd control, and it reduces their movement speed. Very good against melee characters, as you're a ranged unit and you can shoot them while they're out of range. I've also got my Propulsion Round, which is an mobility aid, which lets me run away from enemies very quickly to be able to avoid taking damage or to get out of stuff that's on the ground, telegraphs, circles, so on, that indicate the boss is going to do a bunch of damage in that area. Additionally, I also have my Stun Break, so if I get stunned by something, it is a 2-minute cooldown, so in a lot of content this won't be super useful, because most of the time you get stunned way too often. Also note, some of your abilities might slow enemies as well. On a ranged character, this can be very useful. On a melee character for player versus environment content, not very useful, but player versus player, it's good for being able to chase people down if you can root them and slow them. Different topic for a different day. Okay, next category of abilities after we've done with kind of our mobility, crowd control type stuff is our actual defensive capabilities to help prevent damage that we're going to take. So I've kind of put the majority of them in one small area. I've got Reactive Shield. Just read what it does. Straight up, increases damage reduction for 12 seconds. Great. It's not a ton of damage it reduces, but it adds up and it really does help. Diversion. This is my threat drop, but if you read it, I grant 2 charges of decoy on it, and they each prevent 1 force and attack from dealing damage to me. Echoing Deterrence. Important to read here that it has to be direct single target damage to work against it. I do have a Shield Adrenal, which is a consumable item that I can click to put a bit of extra defensive capability on me. And when you have a companion out, exceptionally good abilities are Heroic Moment and Unity. Now, Heroic Moment is not so much of a defensive ability, it's more of an offensive ability. A lot of players will find this very helpful, especially on level scaled planets where you're being scaled down. You're going to find that these abilities do a lot of damage and they have a lot of AoE in them as well, making them very good. But you'll notice a little bit of healing ticks that keep coming off my character. So it kind of acts like a defensive as well. And then Unity. Unity, hands down, the best defensive ability, like, across the board. Okay, not hands down. Anyways, moving on. Unity gives you 50% damage reduction for you and your companion for 15 seconds. This thing is awesome to remember you have there. And then, of course, another consumable that will help us is just a med pack, allowing us to regain some health. One other thing I do want to point out is your self-cleanse. It would be good to learn where your self-cleanse is and to have it on a hotkey, so that way if you end up getting some debuffs that are dealing damage to you, you can try and cleanse some of them. So that is the basics of how we want to think about the different abilities our characters have and how we can use them to be better. We want to know where our attacks are, so we can do the maximum amount of damage. We want to know when we can use single target versus area of effect attacks. We want to then be able to know how to do crowd control, stunning enemies, knocking them away, slowing them down, so on, as well as using mobility to get out of sticky situations, such as using my Propulsion Round. Then we want to know where defensive abilities are so we can prevent taking damage. And think about this, when there's the most amount of enemies shooting at you is usually when you want to use a defensive, not when you're about to die. Now, defensives do have a very long cooldown, so sometimes it is worth saving them until you're about to die because you don't need to use them for every single fight, right? But if you know you're pulling a fight with a ton of enemies that are going to hurt a lot, or if they killed you and now you got to go back and refight them, then make sure you're using your defensive early on. Now, this group of enemies here, I'm going to take a quick look at them and I'm going to decide how I want to engage them to make sure that I'm not going to take on more than I can actually attack. So I want to try and avoid this guy who's walking up and down, so I want to make sure he's not near the group when I fight them, and I want to stay away from his path so that while I'm in the middle of the fight, he doesn't come over to me and start shooting me while I'm still trying to kill these guys. Now, we have 2 gold enemies and a silver. So the stun effect that I have on my mortar volley is not going to be very useful because it will not stun or knock down enemies that are silver and above. And they're too spread out to be able to use that. So I don't want to start off with my AoE ability here. I'm going to shoot them at range, let them come closer to me. Since they're all melee, since 2 of them are melee units, I might be able to use my AoE at that point once they come on me. But as a ranged character, it's preferable just to keep them away from me by slowing them down and knocking them back so they're not even hitting me. So I can start off by stunning one of these gold adds to make the fight a little bit easier. As long as I don't shoot him, he'll remain stunned while I kill the other guys. I'll probably want to use my Electronet to slow down this enemy here. so that he takes longer to get to me, and then I want to kill the weaker enemies first. If there's a healer, definitely try and kill them first. Otherwise, just kind of kill some of the weaker enemies first instead of these big health sponges that are the gold enemies that will take a long time to mow down. Right? So you're going to reduce the incoming damage by killing enemies first. You can tell your companion to attack first so they get initial aggro, or you can tell them to attack the same thing as you. We're not going to cover that. Don't need to get too technical. So I'm just going to wait for this patrol to move a little bit away. I'm going to stun the first gold ad, and then I'm going to tab over and going to use my slow on the next one, and then tab over to the ranged guy to kill him first because he's a weaker enemy. Now, as you can see in one of my videos on, I think it was top 11 settings in SWTOR you should change, I've got this extra little arrow that tells me the next target I'm going to tab to. Exceptionally useful for helping me know. Otherwise, you can just manually click on the screen if you're not sure which one. So let's start this off. We're going to do our stun, and while that's channeling, we select our next enemy, Electronet, tab over, and now I can kill off this guy and make sure that he dies while waiting for this other melee unit to catch up, right? So now, one of the other important things that I noticed a lot of players make a mistake is they don't necessarily have their camera exactly where they want to have it. So I can knock him back so he does less damage to me, one of the perks being a ranged class. And so they will be a little less effective. And this is actually usually the biggest reason why people struggle, is because either they have their camera in bad places and they can't see where they want to go or where the enemy is or how to do stuff. And of course, the other big thing is not knowing which attacks they can use at the right time. So obviously, we want to be using our attacks as frequently as possible. This is going to be called our actions per minute, and we want to keep that pretty high. The majority of classes are going to be able to sustain actions per minute while fighting enemies around 40 to 50, right? So keep that in mind. Being able to use those attacks, it's very important that you be able to know what your attacks are. It's important to know which ones you can use while moving and which ones you have to be standing still to use, so that you can always be using something while moving. So for example, Hammer Shot can always be used while moving, and it has no cooldown. So by default, if I run out of ideas to do while having to move to avoid damage, just use Hammer Shot. Don't even think and panic and go like, which ability is the best to use in this situation? As long as you're doing something, that is better than doing nothing, so Hammer Shot is always fine. But I do have this set up so that every ability except for my gravity round grav round can be used while moving. So it's pretty simple in this class. I just have to replace grab round with hammer shots whenever I need to be moving. Now, this group here, what do I want to do here? I could stun an enemy, right? I definitely could look into doing that to make it a little bit easier. I also have the option of starting off with my AoE. Of course, since these enemies are silver and gold, I'm not going to be able to knock them down and stun them, so they will quickly run out of this AoE, making it a lot less effective. So yeah, I'm kind of looking at this saying, I don't really want to deal with them running out of my AoE right away, and they're all going to come to me anyways, right? There are some range, there are some melee in here. You can just start with your AoE position so that they have to run through as much as possible to get to you, and that's what I'm going to do here instead of showcasing stunning enemies, right? So we'll start off with that, and then we're going to switch to our other AoE. And it turns out that they're actually mostly ranged enemies. I didn't realize that. So they stayed in my AoE quite nicely, except for this one melee as decided to come out. As you can see, my health is almost dead here. So I could click something like my Reflect, which has self-heal on me. So I purposely wait until I'm low to use that one because I know it will heal me up. And it's a great way to use it. And as you can see, I'm still low on health, but because I'm down to only 2 enemies shooting at me, I didn't bother using any more defensives, as I knew my healing companion would be able to keep up now that so many of them are dead. So there's lots of different ways to approach thinking about how you can do these fights. One of the big and important things that's easy to make a mistake is accidentally engaging too many enemies at once. So if I stand here and shoot these guys, I might accidentally engage this group as they walk into me, and that would be a big no-no. So I want to share one bonus tip with you about a good way to be able to practice stuff on your class to see how different abilities work in a kind of controlled and safe environment where you don't have to worry about getting attacked back. So the thing that we want to do is we want to travel to the fleet. If you have a stronghold such as Alderaan or Rishi, you can also unlock a training dummy in there, or through your legacy, you can unlock a training dummy in your personal starship. So there's quite a few ways to go there, but if you don't have some of these options available to you, we're going to show you on Fleet where to get to those training dummies. To open up your quick travel, if you're on the Republic side, you want to go to Gav Dragon. If you're on the Imperial side, you're going to go to the Zaya Shadow, and then we're going to head up to the bridge deck. Once you're on the bridge deck, head to the area called Training Area, and you'll find these different training dummies. Now, usually to practice your player versus environment stuff, the easiest thing just pick an operations training dummy, but it really doesn't matter which one. You can shoot any of them if you want, right? So I can continue to shoot at this target, and I can practice that muscle memory of knowing which abilities to use, whether that be using my keyboard to click hotkeys for abilities, or using my mouse to click on abilities. And this will definitely help you out, having some practice of just going through your different abilities and attacks, seeing how they work, and playing around with using them. I would like to say that this video is made thanks to my Patreons. I wouldn't be making videos anymore if I didn't have Patreons. That's just the end of the story. So I really want to thank those people for their support. And yeah, I'm kind of a little bit annoyed. I kind of want to just stop making videos, but they keep supporting me, so I feel guilty, and I do want to actually help everybody out, right? I really do appreciate sharing the excitement that I've had with this game with other people. I really enjoy knowing that people get value and that it helps them be better, be happier, enjoy the game more, all those kind of things. So it definitely means a lot to me having that support from those Patrons. And even though I do love the support from everybody else, I've just gotten to the point where, yeah, they're the one thing that keeps me making videos, even though I still enjoy all these other aspects of having a YouTube channel and seeing players engage with my content. So thanks again, everybody, for watching. I hope this was helpful. I wanted to make it shorter. It didn't become very short. And as always, have a great day, and we'll see you in the next video.